Hello again everyone and welcome back along to the channel. It is that time of the week once again for the third and final time of the Lions tour. It is test match number 3. It is 1-1. It is a big one. It's what some are calling the biggest of World Rugby currently. Bigger than the World Cup, I would probably argue that point. But as always, we've brought you a special guest. He's already on the rampage. The Scottish Cannon, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're well. We haven't seen you for a while. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me on the channel, Cornflake. I'm surprised we didn't do anything to do with the Lions tour, but we've been busy with university, working and driving more collabs.
It's been pretty full on. It has been full on. Super Rugby's even taken a back seat. How about that even happening? You're laughing already. Bigger than the World Cup. What do you think about that?
No,
it's a joke,
Stuart Barnes and someone else said it. It's like, of course it's not. It's like, even though it comes around every 12 years for the New Zealand tour, World Cup's the bloody pinnacle of the sport. People who say that are disrespecting, places like France, South Africa, Australia, Georgia, who are there to play a World Cup. They don't get the Lions tour. The Lions tour, while it's a great occasion, it's definitely not bigger than the World Cup. I think those people are bloody idiots who think that.
Yep, I completely agree with you on that. But that's an off-topic point to start us off. But it is 1-1. It is a big test, nonetheless, regardless of World Cup talk. But we have had 1 and 2, and since you haven't been around for those first couple, what have been your thoughts of those opening 2 test matches between the All Blacks and the Lions?
I think it's 2 completely different games, wasn't it? That first game was really attacking rugby orientated, lots of tries, a lot of bomb tries from the Lions. The Lions were on top of the All Blacks in that first test for about 30-40 minutes of that. They probably bombed about 3 or 4 tries, and I said in my review that the scoreline flattered the All Blacks. Some people disagree with me, but I thought 30-15 was probably, I think it was maybe closer to maybe 30-22. I think the All Blacks definitely deserved to win that game. I didn't think it was what the scoreline reflected. In that second test, the Lions wouldn't have won if Sonny Bill Williams didn't get that red card and that wayward kicking from Jordy Barrett. So while the test series is at 1-1, I think the All Blacks have honestly been the better side of the last 2 tests. It's
been a contrasting 2 test matches as well, with especially that second test. The way we expected the Lions to play was kind of the way the All Blacks played, and it was just, everything was all what you thought was completely out the window. So they're heading into the third and final test, the decider, the big one. Hopefully won't end in a draw. How do you think the 2 teams are going to approach this test match?
Well, the way Warren Gatland has, chosen to decide, he's not going to be changing much, is he? He's gone with the Farrell and Sexton 10-12 combination and Jonathan Davis at 13. I'll be surprised if Warren Gatland doesn't use his bench this week, though. I have no idea why I didn't bring on Jack Nell, Ben Teo, and CJ Stander in the last tests. I thought they would have made that impact that the Lions needed, but obviously the Lions really didn't need it because they ended up winning it. But I'm expecting the Lions to try and expose Julian Savia in defense. I'm expecting a lot of bucks kicks from Conor Murray again, and I don't think they'll change much. You don't fix what ain't broke, do you?
Exactly. So we're going to have a look at the 2 squads that have been named, which were named just yesterday. So it's not too much time to really have a look at these sides before the actual match kicks off. But the All Blacks squad, we'll start with them this week because there's a lot to talk about this All Blacks team. There's been a lot of changes in the backs especially. But first things, the forward pack. It has not changed. Overall, from these first couple of tests, and since we're looking at the third with another unchanged pack, do you think that this All Black pack has actually matched or even bettered what the Lions had considered coming here to be their real strength in their forward pack and set piece and the likes?
I honestly think, if you had a look at the scrums, I was one, and many other commentators were coming in and saying that the Lions scrum was going to be absolutely dominant, that they'll be winning scrum penalties all day, that rolling maul would be super effective. But really, the All Blacks have defended the maul, firstly, very, very well. Whenever the Lions have tried to get a rolling maul out, maybe 22 in the 22 of the All Blacks, they've either sacked it, which is the right thing to do, or they've defended it really, really well. Also, the scrums really stood up really well. Cody Taylor and the front row are really have a very strong, base, and often even completely dominate the Lions. If you have a look at the first test, the the All Blacks scrum completely dominated the Lions scrum, and which is a complete surprise because obviously the Northern Hemisphere is known for their set piece and their scrum, but especially the scrum is really held strong for the All Blacks.
It's been a real strength for them. I was surprised. I was expecting it to be an area that the All Blacks would try and contain the Lions more than actually attack them. So it's a complete turnaround in that aspect as well. Big talking point, probably the biggest of this third test, is the midfield of the All Blacks team. Laumape and Antonina Brown will be starting. Fekitoa off the bench. It's hard to disagree because the All Blacks go off this whole style where if you're next in line, you're next in line, regardless of what goes on. Laumape is next in line. He was on the bench to test before. He moves in. It's kind of the way that the All Blacks work. But when you look at the experience that a Fekitoa brings, someone who I thought should have been in the squad to start off with, it's hard to see him not starting, but I think he is going to be a really big impact off the bench. What do you think of this midfield? Do you think it's one that's going to trouble the Lions from what you've seen of Laumape, the little bit you've probably seen from Super Rugby in that test?
Well, the Laumape is absolutely. I mean, he completely destroyed the Lions and Hurricanes midweek test as well. Laumape. I mean, he carries 4 or 5 defenders every time he runs with the ball. He's got very similar characteristics to Ben Teo, doesn't he? So, you know, that's something the Lions probably don't have, is that big ball runner. Ben Teo's obviously on the bench, but I think Laumape will be running at Jonathan Sexton and Owen Farrell all day and giving them nightmares. I mean, you saw what Laumape did to Jonathan Sexton in that Hurricanes midweek match, and I think he will still be having nightmares of some of the demolition that Jonathan Sexton, you know, he tried to defend a much bigger man. Anton Lienert-Brown, you know, he's, you know, I'm not sure about him, to be honest. I think he's probably, I don't like saying this, but I don't really give him much. He's not got much of like flair or X factor to him. Like Laumape's got the X factor, Fekitoa's got the X factor. You know, Nonu had the X factor, but he's like that sort of like Ryan Crotty sort of player, or that Conrad Smith who just needs to get the job done sort of thing. I mean, he's solid in defense and he's solid in attack. He's a very, very balanced player. And Anton Lienert-Brown will, you know, obviously have to do a job on Jonathan Davis, who's been creating quite some havoc for the All Blacks. So yeah, that's what I think. But I really think they'll be missing Sonny Bill Williams and Fekitoa, who's on the bench, and obviously Ryan Crotty, who's injured. So you know, midfield is probably the 4th or 5th choice for the All Blacks, but it's still pretty good, isn't it?
You took the words right out from what I was about to say there about Anton Lienert-Brown. He's very much the Conrad Smith, the Ryan Crotty. Every team needs that guy who's going to make his tackles. He's going to catch the ball. He's going to make that pass in a 2-on-1 or whatever situation it will be. He's going to do the basics well. He's not going to have a great game. He's not going to have a bad game. No. It's very much what the All Blacks base their backline around, a Conrad Smith player for years and years. And if they've got two, because Conrad Smith was like gold, wasn't he, back in the day? If they got two, it'll be like, you know, it'll be like getting the jackpot to be able to go, okay, Crotty's injured, because he does get a few knocks. To have Anton Lienert-Brown sitting in behind would just be perfect for them as well. And yeah, Fekitoa, Laumape, I think, are going to bring the similar sort of thing. Laumape's just going to bulldoze through. I think Fekitoa may be a little bit more agile around the field as the way he moves rather than just bulldozing, but still, I'm still quite happy with that. I think if Laumape can stick it at this level, we could have, you know, some really good options. I'm happier to see Laumape there than I am to see George Moala, I can say that much. I'm not a fan of George Moala at all.
Do you think he'll be nervous for his starting debut?
Hopefully he's got all those nerves out of there from when he played in the last match, in the second test. Because I'm sure he was not expecting to come on in the 25th minute or whenever it was. No. He would have been expecting to come on in the 75th minute when the All Blacks were up by 15 points. You know, that sort of ideal scenario is what he would have been. Did you think
it was the right call from Steve Hansen, taking off Jerome Kano?
It's a bit of a contentious thing, isn't it? Because they lost a bit in the forwards, but I can see where they went with that, to cover the width and to cover the backs, because they were matching it in the forward pack. And to be fair, they did match it in the forward pack enough for the rest of the game 60, as well.
70 minutes, yeah.
Which was surprising with only 7 men. So it's hard to say it was the wrong call, because it was the closest to that game. If they had played, you know, if they had 15 men, you know that they would have kicked to the corner a lot more from penalties instead of for the sticks. That would have happened a lot. Would have been a completely different game. But I think, you know, the more I think about it, the more I've talked about it, I think, you know, Hansen, he's not an idiot at all. So
absolutely not.
and the way that pack stood up, you've got to say that probably was the best choice to make, although at the time I didn't really agree with it. On from the midfield. There's so many talking points about this All Black team. The wings. So Rieko Ioane and Waisake Naholo out, but not on form apparently. Ioane's carrying a bit of a knock or injuries or sickness or something he's been out with. Naholo, his concussion and the likes of it. So that's them two out. So Savia comes back in. I thought this. Oh, I'm not surprised by this. I thought this was going to happen for a while. And Dag from fullback to the wing. We'll talk about the fullbacks in a second. So don't get too ahead of yourself. But I think this is good for the All Blacks because Israel Dag, I think, last week he looked like he had an average game, but I think he did too much. He was covering too much of the field and he was doing everything himself. He got very little support from Ioane, he got very little support from Naholo. Dag will help out the fullback, who we'll call him now because we're going to talk about that next, a lot. So he's almost like a second fullback, but he does his job on the wing well. So I think he's going to be better on the wing for the All Blacks. But what are your thoughts on Savia coming back? Do you think he's going to be insanely hungry to dominate this game and really show why he should be number 11?
It's a hard one, isn't it? Because Julian Savia he's been in and out of form this entire season. But just sort of like the Hurricanes. I mean, the Hurricanes been really good in Super Rugby, but obviously they've had a couple bad games as well. But Julian Savia will be hungry. He's got that experience. He'll be destroying. I don't know the exact. I don't know if he's up against Watson or Elliot Daly more specifically.
Yeah, up against Watson.
Watson. So he'll be running over the top of Watson because Watson's a much more of a more agile stepping sort of winger. While obviously Julian Savia, the bus, is going to be trying to run over the top of him instead of trying to go around him. So I think Julian Savia, he'll be hungry. I was pretty shocked when Julian Savia wasn't picked in that first test and Rieko Ioane was. I don't know what you thought of it, but I thought Julian Savia, purely for his experience alone, should have been in the side regardless. But, I think he'll be there, he'll be hungry, and he'll be really wanting to show people why, you forgot about me in the first two tests. Here you bloody go. I'm going to have the match of my life, and I'm going to absolutely score a couple of tries for the All Blacks.
Yeah, I think he's going to be desperately hungry. I was surprised as well that he wasn't picked in that first test. He's almost that first name on the team sheet, just about with the way he's been over the last few years. But I think Rieko Ioane justified it. I think he was really good in that first test match. He was missing in the second. And, probably the whole illness, sickness thing has kind of worked out kind of well for him because he did, he's a young guy. We know he's got the ability to play test match rugby. So there's no question about this. Now he just needs to be slowly but surely eased in there until he hits his straps at that level. Same thing goes with likes of lanepalp as well. But yeah, Savia's going to be really desperate. He's going to be insanely desperate to do something special. And he's got to show it. Because like last week you said with driving more on here, he thinks Savia's done. And if he doesn't have a big game here, he could be right. He could
potentially.
Be so it could be possibly the last time we see a really good performance from Julian Savia, which is going to be massive. Because the wings, there's not a huge amount of depth, I think, that at international level for the All Blacks as well. And, if Savia's still got to be there or thereabouts. But the biggest talking point.
Well, can I just add on that Israel Dag point?
Yeah, sure.
I completely agree with what you said earlier, is that he is much more better on the wing, I think, than fullback. I think he'll be, providing that. I mean, like you said, he had an average game. And I like Dag more on the wing because of his... he's much more versatile than a Julian Savia or Waisake Naholo. So he also offers that, I guess, a ball-playing role if he also wants to come into that third receiver role outside of Lumape if he decides to pass the ball a little. But, I think Israel Dag's much better in the wing instead of fullback because the fullback is a very interesting call.
Yes, it is indeed, which is a perfect segue onto number 15, Jordy Barrett. How much have you seen of Jordy? What do you think about Jordy?
I said in my preview yesterday, I see him having more potential than Belden. It was his rookie season this year, wasn't it? Or close to it. His second year of Super Rugby. The impact he has made on the Hurricanes alone in just his opening season. Everyone in the world should be scared of this talent for the next 10 years because he's that good. He has all the makings of being an amazing player. And he is a rookie. He's still got so much to learn. He's going to be better than Bolden, and you know, I'm not sure how. It really depends how he'll go here. If he has a really bad matchup against the Lions, he may never see an All Black jersey again, because if he falters under the pressure, they'll be like, he is way too young. He needs to be in the Hurricanes. Honestly, I think he will be. I think he'll be a very good player. I see him being better than Jordy Barrett, who is currently the World Player of the Year.
Exactly. It's going to be interesting to see how he develops. What's interesting though is they said the same about him when he came into the Hurricanes for Super Rugby. He played a couple of games off the bench, and then all the media come out saying, oh, he's too young to start. He should just work his way in during the first season and things like that. And then he just clicked. Obviously, straight away, and now it's like, well, you can't take Jordy Barrett out of the 15. So I'm expecting big things from him. It's going to be huge, but nothing seems to affect these Barretts. You can throw as much as you want at them, but they just go, okay, what's next? Bring it on. Do the next thing. Do your worst. Whatever. So I'm expecting big things from Jordy Barrett. I think he will be the next big star. And how amazing is the depth of the All Blacks at the moment? Barrett,
it's
McKenzie.
Barrett and Barrett.
And Barrett, but everyone's forgot about Damien McKenzie.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be. I don't think he'll be an amazing All Black though. Unless he. I mean, I think what you talked about this on another collab, that the All Black selectors see him more as a 10 than 15. I think it was the Maori All Blacks one or something. I don't think he's a great fullback and he's a great ball runner, but again, I think at the end of the day, his size may get to him.
Yeah, that was what we took down to the Māori All Blacks game where he played at 10 and he had a, well, it's hard to say he had a shocker because that whole game was just an absolute dire situation of bad weather, a forward pack that didn't probably perform at their best and give him a platform. But before Super Rugby, McKenzie was at 10. He played at 10 all before that. And I think next season at the Chiefs, Cruden's gone. And that is when we're going to see Damien McKenzie. He'll be starting at 10 for the Chiefs every week. And that's when we'll see what he's made of. Because the All Blacks, obviously they see him there. I'm thinking half of the reason why he played at 10 for the Māori All Blacks was because of the All Blacks saying, we want to see what he's got against a good opposition like the Lions. And next season we're going to see what he's really made of. But still, depth of talent is ridiculously good for the All Blacks. But speaking of the fullback and speaking of Barrett, what do you make of the move that the All Blacks keep going for, putting Bowden to fullback when they bring on Cruden and switch things around their backline? Obviously, injuries will determine how and when that may happen. But do you think he's as effective at fullback as he is at 10?
Absolutely not. Definitely not. He's the best 10 in the world, and he should be there as much as he can. I really think... I mean, Bowden Barrett, while he's one of the quickest players in the world, I don't think he often really breaks that first tackle or steps around that first tackle, which someone like a Jordy Barrett will do, someone like a Lumape will do. I think he's much better in a ball-playing role, and that's the way I see him. When he goes to fullback, I don't think he's as solid under the high ball as, let's say, Israel Dagger or Ben Smith is. I don't think he's as good as a ball runner as a All Black fullback should be, but I think he provides that depth that, you know, they've obviously got Aaron Cruden, who's also very good at 10, and you know, any other era of the All Blacks probably start at 10 any other day. Maybe not, actually. He's probably not better than Dan Carter or Grant Fox, but obviously he's a very good player, and he definitely deserves to be that in the All Black side in that 22 role. But I'm not a huge fan of Bowden Barrett fullback. I don't think he's as effective on the game as a lot of people would like him to be.
He's kind of like hamstrung by his abilities to do all those special things. But I'm pretty sure the Rugby World Cup in 2015, when he scored that amazing try, he was actually at fullback for that time in that match as well. So he has the ability, and like you say, his move is more manipulating defence and creating overlaps to create that gap that his acceleration shoots him through before defenders can react is his real strength in the game.
And also, obviously, he's got one of the best chip kicks in the world. So you see all the time for the Hurricanes, he does a chip over the top to get to Lumape or Julian Savia, or he does a chip and chase to himself and ends up, passing it off to Ben Smith or someone else to run away with it to score in the corner. So he's much better in that kicking role and that playmaking role.
Yeah, definitely agree with you on that one. But he's just so versatile that the All Blacks are going to continue to use that, I think. Next up, the strength of the bench. I think this is where the All Blacks have got a lot more strength here, mainly because of having the ability of Fekitoa coming off, which will be a lot stronger for them. Do you agree they've got a stronger bench? How do you think the Lions are going to compete when it comes to using their bench, if they use their bench as well?
That's the point. It's like Warren Gatland only used the front row in Reece Webb and Courtney Laws, I think. So Jack Now, Ben Teo, CJ Stander didn't come onto the field in that second half. I think Jamie George also stayed out there for most of the match as well. I can't remember Ken Owens coming on or if he didn't, but if he did, it wasn't a long time at all. I think the All Blacks do have a very solid bench, probably a better bench than the All Blacks. But I'm interested to see how they're going to use it. Obviously, you've got the likes of Arnie Savir on the bench, who's that X Factor bench player that you have. You've got Scott Barrett on the bench. You've obviously got Fekitoa and Cruden. So you've got to use that talent. You've got to bring them on as soon as you think they're going to make an impact on the game, and that's exactly what Steve Hansen's probably going to do.
I think what changed the second test quite a bit too for the All Blacks was when Ardie Savea, you mentioned him, reminded me of this, come on for Sam Cane. I think Sam Cane probably had the game of his life in that second test. He was just destroying everything at the breakdown. He was everywhere around the field, and you noticed a lot went missing when he went off. I think if the All Blacks had 15 men, I would have put Ardie Savea on, even on the blind side, for Kaino if he's still on the field. Just the game that Sam Cane was having. I think they lost a lot of their way, especially in the forwards and around the breakdown when he went off. But after a loss, with the All Blacks going down the second test, what do you think they're going to be like? Is there going to be a huge backlash? Are they going to be just completely brutal? Are they going to demolish? What do you see the All Blacks' mindset? Are they going to just, be out of this world?
Well, there's been a lot of talk in the media over there, which I've seen on Twitter and Facebook, that the Lions have had a very relaxed week in Queenstown while the All Blacks have been in the gym and getting very physical, really getting, themselves pumped up, which is two different things. At the end of the day, I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. But, the Lions are obviously, they've had, going jet boating in Queenstown is more of a holiday than actually playing rugby, which is, it's good. The Lions need to have that and need to get away from the rugby a bit. So I think that would be utter rubbish. I'm expecting the All Blacks to be physical, as they normally are, but I don't think Steve Hansen will really change much either. I think he knows that the All Blacks should have won that second test. I know that the way that they played in that first test, he probably won't want to change much either. I think he'll just be trying to find a way to counteract the Lions' kicking game, which has been, Conor Murray's box kicking in that second test wasn't as good as that first test, but I'm sure Conor Murray is going to be using that box kick quite a bit in this this third test. So they'll be looking at some counter-attack options, and they'll be looking at how to tactically maybe counteract the kicking game that the Lions are most likely going to have.
So finally with the All Blacks, there's been reports this week about the All Blacks losing their way as a top side in international rugby. I think that's a load of crap. Well, what are your thoughts?
That's ridiculous. I mean, I don't understand why the media or people like that come out and say, they lost their way. They lost to the British and Irish Lions. They lost to a team that is full of 4 different countries, minus a Scot, because a Scot hasn't even played in the Lions test. But they're up against the 3 of the best nations in the world, putting together some of the English and the Irish, who are the best in the world, and obviously a few Welsh. The All Blacks, the All Blacks won 18 straight in a row last year, and eventually lost to Ireland and Chicago, and then they've lost again to the Lions. So they've lost once a year for the last few years. I don't understand why people come out and say this rubbish, because it doesn't make any sense. Because the All Blacks are not winning 99.9% of games, they're no longer a top side. They're the best team in the world for a reason, and they are by far the best team in the world. Eddie Jones is slowly closing that gap, and I can't wait for the New Zealand-England match. But the All Blacks are by far still the best team in the world.
I think they've lost 5 games in the last 6 years. Is the way it's gone, which is just insane. I couldn't disagree with that comment anymore if you tried. The fact is, 14 men for 3/4 of the match against a team made up of 4 nations, granted 3 nations, and still to only lose within 3 points. I mean, you've got to be a ridiculously good team to have won that match anyway. But that is it on the All Blacks. We'll have a quick look at the Lions, because there's not much going on here with the Lions. Their team is unchanged. the whole 23 unchanged. But a couple of talking points here in the front row. Marco Vunipola come under a lot of pressure during the week about his penalties and his style of playing. Do you think he's lucky to still be there?
No, I think I don't think Warren Gallons was going to change much unless he had, Marco Vunipola got suspended. Some people thought it was going to be a red card. For me, it was definitely not a red card. Anyway, that's a discussion for another day. But I think Marco Vunipola, he brings that running ability that most of the props in the Lions do not have. He probably is not he's probably not the best scrummager there, but I think Marco Vunipola, while he gets a bit, he fires up and maybe doesn't control himself, like he gave 2 stupid penalties away in that game. I still think he was going to be in the side regardless. I mean, Atoje gave away some of the laziest penalties in that Lions game, in that second test as well, but he's still there. You've got to have Atoje in the team. He wasn't there in the first test, and look at what the All Blacks did to the Lions forward. So, if you're saying that argument to drop Vunipola, it would be the same argument to drop Maro Atoje, because he gave 2 or 3 stupid penalties away, being lazy in defense.
A lot of the talk over the front row as well has been with how the Lions play their front rowers in groups. So we've always seen those 3 start, the next group of 3 started together, and that sort of thing. So I don't think we would ever see one change. I thought Jamie George was lucky after the first test, but again, it comes down to those groups, and it would completely upset the whole rhythm that they have to change this one player, unless it's, like you say, the suspension or injury, something like that, force them to do it. In the back row, O'Brien, what do you make about his little indiscretion that went to the judiciary over the week? Do you think he's lucky to be there, or fair enough to be cleared?
No, fair enough. I came out on Twitter and said this is fair and just, and I think it was the way it was. I don't think there was little to any intent in that swinging arm, and I put loosely on Waisake Naholo. Some people Waisake Naholo got injured and he was out for the rest of the game. Sean O'Brien should have been out for the rest of the game because he took a player out. Unfortunately, those things happen in rugby, and unfortunately, some things just happen by accident. And I don't think merited a red card. I don't think it probably warranted maybe a yellow card, because obviously number of factors, like he was falling and stuff. I read World Rugby's press release on the sighting and why he got cleared. I thought if anyone's still upset about it, go and read that. They go into a ton of detail about why Sean O'Brien was not suspended. So I think it was the completely fair and right call. Those things happen in rugby, and there was no intent, and it wasn't malicious. And that was my opinion. Some people disagreed with me, but as you do.
Yes, you do. In the backs, the 10-12 combination, Sexton Farrell. Have you thought this has been better than the Farrell-Teo combination we've seen in the first test? Do you think this is going to create more chances? I know I'll talk about the likes of Teo, Davis not passing the ball, things like that. Is this the key for the Lions' backline?
See, it's an interesting one, because I think the Lions created the same amount of opportunities in the first test as they did in the second test. In that first test, the Lions bombed 3 or 4 tries. They really bombed 3 or 4 tries. Ben Teal didn't pass the ball when he should have, or Anthony Watson popped the ball up when he should have just taken the tackle, or whatever. Honestly, obviously Teal brings something that Jonathan Sexton doesn't. Jonathan Sexton brings something Ben Teal doesn't. Obviously, the way that Owen Farrell and Jonathan Sexton are going to play is they're going to try and distribute the ball as fast as possible to Jonathan Davis and the wingers, and give them as much opportunity to get around the Julian Savir or get through the middle of a Leroy Brown and Lumape. It's a different style of game. I'm not sure. Honestly, I'm not sure what I like more, because you're going to change your game plan based purely on if Ben Teal's in the side or not. So Ben Teal, great ball running ability, and you get over the gain line every time like Lumape would do. But Jonathan Sexton brings that extra kicking option. He brings that passing distribution to Owen Farrell. And Owen Farrell obviously plays 12 mostly for England. He plays more 10s for his club. But I'm not sure. I'm not going to give you an answer here, because I think they're both good for different reasons and both bad for different reasons.
So moving on to what you just slightly mentioned, the style of play that we're going to see from the two sides. You're expecting to see so much kicking as we have from the first 2 tests. The All Blacks to rely on the Lions kicking back to give them the counter-attacking chances. Will we see the Lions giving the faith in their back 3 to continue on what's probably been their most promising thing to come out of this tour? Some players who can actually attack. Do you think the style's going to change at all? We're just going to see the first and second test, maybe with 15 players on each side.
I think it's going to be a complete mixture of the first and second test, to be honest. I'm not sure about the weather in Auckland because I've been keeping up to date with it. But looks like shit.
That's the next point.
It looks like... Oh, well, there you go. So if it looks like shit, I think kicking's going to be a big aspect of the game. It's got to be. You saw Liam Williams drop the ball about 100 times in that second test. And giving the All Blacks good field position. And I think that'll be the exact same of what they'll be trying to do both sides if it's wet. If it's not wet, I think there'll be, as I said earlier, Owen Farrell and Jonathan Sexton will be trying to get out to the wings as fast as possible and let their outside backs do the talking, because obviously we know what Liam Williams can do. We know what Anthony Watson can do. We know what Elliot Daly can do. We also know what Gillian Saviat can do, and we also know what Israel Dag and Jordy Barrett can do. So, they're the attacking weapons, and they're there in their respective positions because they're some of the best attacking players in the world. It really depends on the weather, and I know that's a cop-out answer, but I think it's going to be a mixture of the first and second test. Hopefully there's more running rugby, but hopefully it's not as miserable as that match in Wellington either.
Indeed. So you mentioned the weather. It does look to be fairly wet, showery is the word, but fields and that are so good these days that if the rain stays away, it does dry out pretty quickly. So if we can get some dry weather, it could make for slightly better than if it's pouring with rain. The other final point I want to make about was the referee, and as Mr. Referee you are yourself, what are your thoughts on, I think we've got Roman
Poit. Yeah.
What do you think about him?
I think it's going to, I've got a love-hate relationship with Roman Poit. I think he's very technically sound, but I think at the same time he often comes across as arrogant or as stuck up, which you saw in the Brazil Cup last year, where he didn't let Stephen Moore talk to him at all. Some people were criticizing him based on how he officiated and how he communicated with the English in that England-Italy game, when Italy did that no-ruck thing. So, I think Roman Poit, he'll be technically very sound. He'll be making the right decisions. I'll just be interested to see how he communicates with players and the way in which he reacts to the style of game that both are going to play. I think Jerome Garces was, he was consistently inconsistent, which made a lot of... I don't know what the media sort of, discussion was over there, but were they roasting Jerome Garces much? But I think he'll be, he's obviously a French ref as well, so I think he'll be very similar to Jerome Garces, and will probably favour the Lions slightly because Roman Poit referees the European scenes much more than the Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah, there wasn't too much hate on the referee, to be fair. There was the test was kind of taken as a part where, yes, we only had 14 players and we only got, only lost them 3 points. Should have won it, yes, but to come that close with that few, man down for most of the game is still a pretty damn good effort. He was put across as, like you say, that's exact words I use as well, consistently inconsistent. He was inconsistent, made bad decisions, but not towards one team or the other. There were some shockers both ways. He missed a lot of stuff, but it went both ways. So I think a lot of the time he played a little bit of catch-up as well with the two sides, and he thought, I stuffed up over there with those guys. I'll let that one slide with these guys because even things out. Is that the right way to referee? It's a tough call.
Honestly, I think that's the way I try to referee. I'm trying to be as consistent for the both sides as well. If I miss something, like for an example, if I miss for example, if someone takes a tap kick without the ball leaving their hands, and one team does it and I miss it, and I notice a few seconds late that I should have called it up, I'll give the exact same veracity to the other team. I'll be like, that happened over there. It's happened to me a couple of times in the game. So I think as long as the referee is consistent in their decision making within that game, I've got no problem with the decision to be controversial. Well, not controversial, but wrong. And I put that loosely again.
Yeah, so that's the way he refereed that match, I thought as well. I didn't think it was that bad as terms of fairness to both sides. Last thing, who's going to win? Lions or Blacks?
You want to answer first? I've been answering all these questions first.
All Blacks, easy. I've got them by 20. No, actually, I went 18 the other day when I did the Driving More sort of podcast, which you can check out if you haven't already. 18, I went by.
Right. Okay. I said 6 in my preview on my channel. But to be honest, I do think the All Blacks will probably win by a little bit more. But again, it depends on the weather, it depends on the style of play they'll have, and it depends if Warren Gallen wants to use his bench or not.
Yes, indeed. A lot of factors for the deciding test match. Thank you for joining me very much. Where can people get hold of you if they haven't seen you, which I'll be very surprised if they haven't, but going nuts.
You can find me on Twitter at ScottishCannon4, and you can find me on YouTube at the Scottish Cannon. Obviously, we've done quite a few collabs before, so you know, if you haven't seen me, and it means we need to do more collabs.
And there could be lots of newcomers around for the Lions tour. So go check out the Cannon as well. He's got some good content on rugby, previews of matches, all sorts of things, new game details, and all sorts of goodness to do with rugby. So go check him out. All the details will be in the description for you to click on. So thanks for joining me as always, and we'll see you all next time. Hopefully a bit of review of the third test, whoever wins. Until then, take care.
Bye-bye.